What's lying in this grass right here?
So that's the shotgun.
State 60.
Yeah, so this is just, again, another mid-range overlap going into now starting to hit the driveway. So this is just one angle facing 301.
State 61.
Yeah, this is, again, mid-range of the driveway where the blood and shotgun shells are at.
State 62.
And so this is facing Satilla Drive. So this is an actual overview. So that way, a different perspective from Holmes Road to Satilla Drive.
State 63.
So this is a mid-range of the shotgun shells and the blood stain on the asphalt.
I'm putting my pencil on right there. What
Yeah,
are we
that's
looking at?
a shotgun shell.
And these red spots?
Those are blood. So this here is just mid-range of the blood on the asphalt and driveway.
State 65.
So it's the same overlap, the blood in the driveway. This is a mid-range of the shotgun shell that is at the edge of the driveway on the asphalt.
State 67.
Yeah, this is the shotgun shell that's in the driveway and the blood. So this is an overview of the blood to show from the driveway out to Holmes Road.
State 69.
This is the mid-range of what is the wadding shot cap.
And when you say wadding shot cap, can you tell the jurors a little bit what that is in relation to any of the other evidence?
Yeah. So what this is that your shotgun shell has powder and shots in it. All this does is separate the powder and the shots from mixing. So it's inside of that. So when the gas goes off, that comes out with it sometimes. But all it is to keep it from the shots and the gunpowder from mixing.
State 70.
Yep. This is mid-range of the shotgun shell and the pool of blood.
State 71.
So these are close-ups of Ahmaud before we take the sheet off.
State 73.
This is a mid-range of the shotgun in the grass.
State 74.
And this is your close-up of the shotgun.
State 75.
And this is a mid-range to show just the conjunction between where the shotgun is to Ahmaud.
State 76.
So at this particular point, we stopped to place photo identifiers, and so this picture is showing an overall of those photo identifiers.
Okay. So this picture, you start to place little placards to identify, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. And what's the purpose of doing that?
So that's just for us whenever we take pictures to keep evidence in line so that way we don't forget anything. So it's just like photo identifiers so that when you're looking at photographs of a single individual and I say placard 1, you would be able to identify placard 1 and what that evidence is in conjunction to it.
Now, when you're putting these placards up and you start with numbering, right, is there a piece of evidence that you choose in particular, or is it random, or does it depend on the case, or how do you decide the numbering system on where to start, with the evidence?
So anybody could be different in it. There's no set procedure on how you mark it. Me, I always start from either one end and work my way, in. So I started down at the end of the driveway by marking my evidence and working my way up to Satilla Drive.
So, state 77. One second. Just 1 second. Document count. Use the electronic version of these. Started at 77. While we're getting that up, we're going to kind of do it old school style. Let's hand them out, okay? If you don't mind, I'm going to pass the photographs along, or I'll walk it across, whatever you prefer, Judge.
All right.
Is this number 77?
This is number 77.
Yeah. Why don't we could just walk it across. We'll handle it that way. So,
It will be published to the defense take.
let's give it a moment. See if we can keep everybody in place for just a moment. If we may have an idea on what we need to do. ladies and gentlemen, the joy of technology is that it seems really cool and fancy, but sometimes it may be better to just work with paper. We, from the state, are we just going to be walking through the photographs for a little bit?
Yeah.
All right, why don't we do that? Cedric, let's do this. We'll do it in a break, and we'll just work through it then. All right, thank you. Yeah, if we're working through the photographs, since they're in and they would go back, you can just go ahead and publish just by showing the panel. All right, thank you.
Flashing it this way, just so we know which one we're doing.
Yeah, let's go ahead and make sure it's identified by number. I assume y'all have a copy?
We do.
Okay, identify by number if you, from the state, identify by number, show them just so that we're all on the same page, no pun intended, and then walk it down the jury.
All right, let's go, Ramos. We're going to show you 77. You see that what that is?
Yes, that is placard number 1. That's a shotgun shell.
Okay. So this is what you were talking about when you started numbering, right?
Correct.
Okay. State's Exhibit 78. What are we looking at?
So that is placard number 2, another shotgun shell.
State's number 79.
Yeah, so that is placard number 3. And this, I believe, is the wadding cap and the blood around it.
State's number 80.
Mm-hmm. Yep, that's going to be placard 3. It's going to be the wadding cap.
That's an up-close version of
That's correct.
previous photograph. We're going to turn back to the mono board for State's Exhibit number 81. What are we looking at here?
Okay, so that there is placard number 4. This here, I could not tell if it was bone and tissue or if it was tissue that was surrounded by a shot. And so that would be placard number 4.
Okay. State's 82.
This is just a close-up of that piece of evidence, either the tissue or the tissue surrounded by the shot.
And when you were putting numbers on the shotgun shells and that sort of thing, did that in any way indicate the order of the shots, or was that just strictly for documenting purposes?
No, the placards that get placed down are just nothing for documentation purposes.
State's 83.
So this, there we go. This is a placard number 5, which is the 12-gauge shotgun.
Okay. All right, we're going to turn from that to pictures of the body. State's Exhibit number 84.
So these are overlapping of Ahmaud's body.
Let me get out of your way. So when you're taking pictures of a body on scene, do you do it the same way you do the scene itself, overall, close-up, medium range, and different angles, that sort of thing?
That's correct.
Okay. All right. States 85.
So this is the, again, overlapping of his mid section.
States 86. Now, when you're documenting pictures of the body as a crime scene investigator, are you looking for anything in particular in terms of wounds, that sort of thing, or what is your job as a crime scene tech when dealing with the body and taking photographs of the body?
So we're looking for any injuries so that we can, take pictures of them. The body was moved by the time that we got there, just because first aid was provided. So we were not able to get the original, but we take them so that way we can document what we see on scene, and that way when the medical examiners, take a look at it, we can, kind of compare notes, on what we have as far as injuries and that they're consistent.
States 87.
So this is your mid-range, your close-up of Ahmaud's whole body before we start manipulating his shirt and everything.
States 89.
So this is the, let's see, this is the close-up before we start moving anything on him. This is the shotgun wound to the center of the chest.
Now, from your determination or from your investigation, the shirt, it appears to be red. Is this the color of the shirt, or is this from another substance?
No, that would be another substance. It would be his blood.
States 90.
So this is me getting the mid-range of the injury that is underneath his kind of armpit and shoulder. So this right here is what I'm starting to look at. I don't know if you guys can see that or not.
States 91, that might bring us closer in.
Yeah. Yep, so this is the mid-range of the gunshot wound underneath his arm, kind of to his shoulder.
States 93.
So this is of his legs and his shoes, just trying to see if there was any injuries in that area.
States 95.
And this is just getting just the bottom tread of the shoe.
States 97.
So this is what appears to be a gunshot wound to his wrist.
States 98.
So this is the close-up of the wound or the gunshot wound that's to the center of his chest.
States 99. Mr. Ramos, do you know what that white object on his chest is?
I do not. I want to say it's probably left there from squad.
Good.
99.
So these are the injuries that are going to be photographed with a scale.
And that scale that you use,
Mhm.
what are the measurements on that scale?
They're by meters.
Right.
Yeah.
States 100.
And this is the scale for the gunshot wound that's underneath his armpit and his shoulder.
States 101.
And so these are not in order. This would have been before we would have lifted his shirt up to get that actual full view underneath it. So this is with the shirt still over the wound and the scale.
And when you're taking these photographs, are you manipulating the clothes in any way to get to the wounds?
Not until we're done doing what we have to on the outside, and then we'll manipulate it by pulling out so that we can actually get a full view of it.
Okay. Did you make those cuts in the shirt at all?
No.
All right, states 103.
So when Ahmaud was removed by the coroner's office, this is the area that he was, laying at.
And states 104.
So this here, whenever the coroner office takes control of the body, they put them in a black bag, and they will make an identifier marker, which is just a tag that has information on it, and then that red zip ties seals it so that way nobody can tamper with that bag.
Yeah, sure, down. At the time you took that picture, was there any sort of identification on the body?
There was not.
Okay. Is there anything in his pockets or anything like that that could help identify?
There was not.
What happens to all the clothing and that sort of thing once it leaves the scene?
So everything gets put into the bag with him, and it goes to the medical examiner's office, and then they examine everything that's on him, his clothing, to make sure that what our statements and the coroner's statements and they're all come together to cooperate, all the findings and facts.
After you're done taking pictures of the scene, at what point do you start collecting the evidence?
So we don't start collecting until after we get done with the sketch. So we have our photographs that we take, and then we take our sketches, and then we'll go ahead and process and collect.
And did you do a sketch in this case?
I did.
I'm going to show you what's marked as State's Exhibit 334, 335, and 336. And I previously shown this to the defense. Can you take a look at these and tell me if you recognize what these are?
Yeah, so this is the evidence that I collected on scene.
Okay. And let's start with the first number.
So this one,
Go ahead and read the exhibit number out if you see it on there. It might be on the back side of that one. The State's exhibit.
there we are. So exhibit number 334 is a shotgun shell. It's a 12 gauge shotgun shell. Exhibit number 335 is your wadding shot cap. And then exhibit 336 is another 12 gauge shotgun shell.
And is there a way, hold on those real quick.
Okay.
When you're looking at those envelopes, is there a way that you match up what you see on the scene and what you documented on the scene with placards to what you actually put in the envelope?
You're talking about like a chain of custody?
Yeah.
Yes.
Walk them through how you maintain chain of custody in terms of the evidence once it's on the ground. To when you put it in the envelope. Yep.
All right, so of course, chain of custody is nothing but like a record of someone taking control or transfer or disposition of property, and it's to remain the integrity, you know, so that way if courts or anyone that handle the evidence knows that this is the authentic piece of evidence that came from the scene. So what I have to do, or anyone who's going to collect it, we have to determine, one, what type of packaging that we're going to package it in to just keep from any cross-contamination and remain its integrity. And then once we figure that out, once we package it in that container, then we go ahead and place it in our containers in our car and then transport it to our headquarters, which then goes into our lab where I take the evidence and seal it up.
And did you follow those steps in this case?
I did.
Okay. And once you seal it up, is there any anything you do with the evidence to, in terms of the envelopes, to show that you sealed it?
Yes, we date and initial the back of the seal, where if somebody was to tamper with it, like if they cut it, then we're going to know that something has been manipulated because my initials and stuff have been distorted.
And did you do that for those 3 pieces of evidence?
I did.
All right. And Judge, at this time, the state moves to place State Exhibits 334, 335, and 336 into evidence.
No objection.
No objection.
No objection.
They're admitted.
Is there, Investigator Ramos, is there any other piece of evidence that you collected on scene physically?
The 12-gauge shotgun.
Okay. And Your Honor, this we're going to present to the investigator shotgun. It's been made safe by the sheriff, so it's not able to be fired. Permission to approach.
Good.
Investigator, I'm going to show you what's been marked as State's Exhibit 332. If you go ahead and take a look at that, if you could hold it, or actually I'll hold it right here. And can you tell me if you recognize what this is?
Yeah, so that is the shotgun that I collected on scene that was in the grass. That's what that is.
You've drawn her away from the mic a little bit. If I
Oh,
could
I'm
just
sorry, yeah.
Well, we can do one too. If you're away from the mic, to speak up a little bit. The jury can hear you. I just want to make sure folks on the other
Yeah,
side
no,
can
I
hear you, too.
understand. So that's the shotgun that I collected from the scene.
Okay. And do you go through the same process, or did you go through the same process with this shotgun as you did with the other pieces of evidence on scene?
Yeah, the only difference was because it was biohazard, and at the time, I did not have a box to put it in. We took our paper bags, the large ones, and we put it in there and taped it and sealed it until we got it to headquarters, where then I was able to transfer it to a box.
Okay. And the process of sealing it up and that sort of thing, was that the same thing that you did in this case?
Yes.
Okay. And in addition to the shotgun, was there anything inside the shotgun or outside the shotgun that you placed into that evidence box at that time?
Yeah, so when we had to go and clear the shotgun, once we were ready to collect it, Investigator Chris Lowther cleared it, and there were 4 unfired shotgun shells and then 1 fired in the chamber.
And you placed those into the evidence box and sealed it?
That's correct.
Judge, at this time, State moves to place State's Exhibit 332 and its contents into evidence.
Let me just make sure I'm clear on what the contents are.
Okay. Walk us through again what you placed inside the box.
So that is the 12-gauge shotgun that was used and located in the grass. That shotgun does contain biohazard. It has blood on it, more likely going to be dry. So that's what's inside the box.
And any sort of ammunition?
There will be 4 unfired and 1 fired.
In the box?
In the box.
Okay.
No objection.
No objection, Your Honor.
No objection.
It's admitted.
We're not at this point gonna take the shotgun out.
Okay. So the seals are still in the box?
The box has been unsealed at a prior time, but everything is inside the box at this point. We unsealed it in front of the investigators to make it safe for the courtroom.
Okay. Thank you.
We talked a little bit about, at the time you went out there, the body was unidentified, is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. What are some of the next steps that you go through in order to identify a body?
So what we'll do is we'll obtain fingerprints from them. So at that time, myself and investigator Chris Lowther obtained Ahmaud's prints, which at that point is basically just an ink pad that we press the fingertips into, and then we press it onto a fingerprint card, and then I turn that fingerprint card over to investigator Lowther to process.
And were you able to identify who this person was?
Yes,
And who was that person?
Ahmaud
Do you know his last name?
Arbery.
Was there anything else in terms of investigation that you did regarding the neighborhood and neighbors when you were there?
I did. I did a canvass of the neighborhood.
And what does that mean? What does a canvass in the neighborhood mean?
So all we're doing is trying to locate or identify witnesses, as well as, surveillance video of the neighborhood.
And do you remember some of the questions that you would be asking the neighbors at the time you went out there?
Yeah, so we were instructed to, gather surveillance video. So that's one question that we're, asking. And if they saw or heard anything, is the follow-up questions to those.
Were you able to gather any sort of surveillance at that time when you were there?
I was not.
And were you able to speak to some folks?
Yes.
What happened, what y'all do if the neighbors or any witnesses from the houses weren't there when you went to their homes?
So if we didn't make any contact with them or they weren't home, we would just leave a business card with the case number and a good alternate contact number.
If you were to get any sort of callbacks or follow up with the neighbors, would that be you or would that be a different investigator that would do that?
Possibly would be another investigator.
Were you the lead on this crime?
I was not.
At some point, did you go to a different house within that same neighborhood and do any other sort of investigation?
Yeah, so during the course of processing the scene at Holmes Road and Satilla Drive, I was informed that another resident had been hit by one of the projectiles. So we went over there after we were done processing the scene.
I'm going to show you what's been marked as State's Exhibit 105 through 114. And they've previously been shown to the defense. Just 1 second. off. Can you take a look at them and tell me if you recognize what they are?
Yeah, so this is the residence of 232 Satilla Drive.
And tell us again why you went out to this house.
Because a projectile had entered into their home.
And are these a true and accurate representation of the photographs you took of that home?
They are.
And do you remember what the address was?
232 Satilla Drive.
And do you know who the owner of that house was?
Mr. Randall Parr.
Judge, at this time, state moves to place State's Exhibit 105 through 114 into evidence.
No objection, Your Honor.
Subject to the court's prior rulings.
No objection, subject to the court's prior ruling.
They're admitted.
So we'll start with State's Exhibit 105. Can you tell us what we're looking at here?
Yep, so from Satilla Drive, the roadway, taking a picture of 232 Satilla Drive.
Okay. State's 106.
So this here is facing Holmes Road and Satilla Drive.
I'm going to walk up to the monitor board and see what I'm pointing at here.
Yeah, so that's 301 and Holmes Road, and then Satilla Drive, and then the mailbox with the numbers 232 to depict the address where the shots were fired in conjunction to Holmes Road.
Is this roughly where the shooting occurred, where I'm pointing with my finger?
Yes.
And for the record, that's on State's Exhibit 106 that I'm pointing, the top left part of the screen. 107. Actually, let's go right to 108.
Yeah. So what we're looking at, because there are bushes, as you can see to the left of the screen, trying to get the picture of the window that was hit from a projectile.
State 109.
So this is a mid-range of the bullet hole in the window.
State's 110.
Again, another mid-range of the bullet hole.
State's 112.
And this is the close-up of the bullet hole through the window.
And State's 114.
Because the projectile did enter through the window, it stopped at the wall in the living room.
Now, at the point you went out there during the investigation, did you go in to recover that projectile?
Yeah, so we asked Mr. Parr if he'd be willing to let us cut his wall to retrieve the projectile, which at that point he was in the process of selling it and did not want any damage done to his walls. So I passed the information along to the case agent to either obtain a search warrant to retrieve the projectile or make a decision on it.
Just 1 second.
Mm-hmm.
right, when you were packaging up the evidence, I think we already talked about him, Mr. Arbery, having nothing in his pockets that y'all found.
Correct.
Okay, so, do you know if he had a telephone or a cell phone on him that day?
He did not.
What about a wallet or any sort of weapon or anything like that, tools?
No.
All right, Judge, at this time, no further questions subject to redirect.
Thank you. From the defense?
We have a 10 minutes?
Yes. Let's go ahead. Ladies and gentlemen, it's going to be 15. Well, let's go ahead and take a 15-minute recess. We'll come back for the continuation of the evidence. You just hold for a moment.
So rise for jury, please.
Okay. You want to be seated? And you can go ahead and step down. I remind you that you're still under oath, so during the recess, please do not discuss your testimony with anybody. Thank you. 15 minutes, everybody.
seated, please.
All right, we've got all the defendants represented by counsel. Understand we're ready to proceed. Mr. Sheffield? All right, let's get the panel. I'm sorry, and the witnesses on the stand. See, got my back to the witness now.
Right over here. Can I use the marker?
Yeah.
All rise for the jury. Please be seated.
All right, welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. One thing I've noticed is make sure you bring layers. Some days it's hot, some days it's cold. Today it's cold. If it makes you feel any better, it's a lot colder in the back. That aside, welcome back. I believe we are ready to proceed with the evidence in this case. Mr. Sheffield.
Yes. Hey, good morning.
Good morning.
We've had a chance to speak briefly before, haven't we?
We have.
Okay, I'm Jason Sheffield. I represent Travis McMichael. So I wanted to go back just a little bit and understand how you were gathering information to then make the decisions that you made over the course of taking photographs and working the crime scene on that day. Okay?
Okay.
Okay, great. May I approach the witness? Yes. I'm going to show you what I've marked as defendants exhibits 10 and 11. Ask if you recognize these.
Yes.
What are those?
These are my crime scene sketches.
Okay. Is that something that you do in every crime scene case when you show up and are taking a look at where evidence may be that needs to be collected?
Not in every one, no.
Okay. You did crime scene sketches in this case? Is that
Yeah.
correct?
Our department has it where anything to do with homicides is mandatory sketches. If there's injury, we'll do sketches, and anything natural deaths.
Okay. Are these fair and accurate copies of your actual crime scene sketches in this case?
Yes.
Okay. I move into evidence, defense exhibit 10 and 11.
No, okay.
Permission to publish?
Go ahead. Whatever's sitting, I assume those were just the crime scene photographs that already been admitted.
I'm working with these, yes, Judge.
Okay, the only reason I asked, just so everybody's aware, if you put them down on the table, that document camera is going to pick it up. So
Okay.
let's just be
I'm going
aware
to
of it.
publish to the jury.
I'm sorry. I believe I said it's admitted. Go ahead.
You did, yes.
Okay.
May I publish? Okay. published to the jury. Yes. Louder. I need to be louder. Okay. I will do that. Okay. I'm showing Defendants Exhibit 10. This is one of the crime scene sketches that we were just talking about. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And very basically, it shows the deceased body in the roadway,
That's correct.
as well as the streets of Satilla and Holmes, right?
That's correct.
And then you've got a number of things numbered that you've collected, shotgun shells.
Hold on a second. You gotta make it a little bit bigger. They can't see it.
It's hard to see it.
There's a zoom button on there.
Yeah.
To the right?
I see it.
The jury's telling you the button's on the bottom left.
I see the zoom button right here, but I've gone too far. And what was in the way of this thing? You are. Okay. And I'm in the way. All right. So just very, very briefly, I'll move out of the way. What we're talking about here is essentially just the drawing that you've done, right?
That's correct.
Okay. And you do this to get an idea of and to create a memory of where everything is located.
That's correct.
In addition to marking where things are located, you also identify these things by numbers.
That's correct.
Okay. And you also do some measurements.
That's correct.
Okay. And so if we move to this side, here we can see what you listed out of the objects that you may have collected, right?
Correct.
Okay, and we've just admitted some of those into evidence.
Correct.
Okay, very good. Now I'm going to show Defense Exhibit 11. It's a little zoomed in. There's 11. And you've mentioned the pole. What is that pole you're talking about?
So in the pictures where I'm facing Satilla Drive, you'll see a pole. That's what I'm referring to.
And the pole was located on somebody's property?
That's correct.
And then you're measuring distances from that pole to the various objects?
Correct.
Okay, just to get an idea of where everything is in relation to each other.
Correct.
Fair, okay. And then I move this up a little bit. You see down here at the bottom, there are other distances that you've written down here with these types of numbers, right arm, left arm, those types of things.
Correct.
Just to understand the body's position in the roadway.
So the measurements are based off of a triangulation measurement.
Okay?
So what we do is we take a foot. So your left foot would go from, let's say, the pole, and you'd measure that, and then you take another object and you measure that left foot to that to get your exact point.
Got it. You're just trying to be precise about where everything is.
That's correct.
It's to make sure that there's a complete record of what you're observing on that day, in addition to photographs.
Correct.
Okay, very good. Thank you. When you first got out there on the scene that day, did anyone make you aware that there was a video that captured some of the interaction between Mr. Arbery and Travis McMichael?
They did not.
So you did not have the benefit of that video to try to figure out what had happened before your arrival?
I did not.
Okay. Did you speak with other officers about what the path of travel was in terms of where Mr. Arbery may have run that day?
I did not.
Okay, so you were not aware when you were out there that he was running from 220 Satilla Drive and up Satilla Road?
I was not.
Okay. To be sure, you were not aware that he ran up Burford Road.
Objection to facts not in evidence.
I'm asking if he was aware of it. There's no...
It's a big if. We're still working through the facts in the case, so.
That's fine, yeah.
Well, but we got the opening, so, yeah, where are we going?
I think that what we're doing here, Your Honor, is we're making sure that she is or is not aware of certain facts. She can testify that she was or wasn't aware of those things. I'm not testifying, I'm asking her.
Just whether she was,
Yeah.
what she was familiar with at the time she was arriving on scene.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah. Did you have any information that Mr. Arbery ran up Burford Road?
No.
Okay. Or that he ran further, what I'll characterize as up Holmes towards Zellwood?
No.
Okay. So then if I have a map here of the neighborhood. Have you seen a map like this before?
I have.
Does this look familiar like a map of Satilla Shores neighborhood?
Yes.
Okay. I think I'll just show it to the state. Just to help demonstrate your testimony, I want to make sure that we're on the same page. And I'll try to hold it so everybody can kind of see it here. So if I put it up here, is that okay, Your Honor? All right. So you recognize this intersection right here as Holmes Road, correct?
Correct.
Okay. So what we're talking about is Burford continues all the way up here and then kind of comes around to Zellwood, right?
Correct.
Okay. And then we have 220 Satilla, which is over here, kind of right around where Jones intersects Satilla. Do you see that?
I do. Yes.
Okay. So is it fair to say that you did not take any photographs of anything up here on Satilla Drive?
Except for 232 Satilla Drive.
Except for 232 where that stray buck shot went.
Correct.
Okay. And it's fair to say you didn't take any photographs coming up Burford?
I did not.
Okay. And then what I was just asking you about Holmes, Mr. Arbery's body was sort of down here toward the end, what I'll call the end of Holmes where it intersects with Satilla, correct?
That's correct.
But you did not take any photographs up in here
I did not.
or back here on Zellwood?
That's correct.
Okay. I just want to establish whether you did or you didn't. You were asked about whether or not Mr. Arbery had anything in his pockets. You recall that?
I do.
Okay. And what you're saying is when the clothes were collected, that nothing was contained in the pockets at that time.
Correct.
Okay, but we've just talked about an extensive amount of roadway, Satilla Drive from 220 Satilla, up through Burford, and then up and down Holmes Road, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Did you or any officer canvass Satilla Drive in any way to determine whether or not there was anything that could have belonged to Mr. Arbery?
Not that I was directed to do so.
Not that you were directed to do so. Okay. So
Correct.
you did not canvass Satilla in any way to look for any belongings of Mr. Arbery's.
Correct.
Similarly, you did not canvass Burford Road to look for any belongings of Mr. Arbery. That could have been
Correct.
attributed to Mr. Arbery.
Correct.
Or similarly, up Holmes Road.
Correct.
Okay. We were looking already at State's Exhibit 46. And in State's Exhibit 46, I think you've identified this as the corner of where Holmes Road comes and meets here with Satilla Drive. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, so essentially the house that we see in this Exhibit 46 is the house right here on the corner. That would be 235.
Correct.
You were saying 235 when I was saying 235.
Right, yes.
Okay. And as we look at this picture, and based on your memory, isn't it true that there are no fences that line this property that would obstruct anybody from passing through the yard?
That's correct.
Okay. Do you recall looking at 301 on this side of the yard and also seeing that there were no fences that were obstructing any part of the yard?
Yes.
Did you go further back up Holmes to determine whether or not there were any fences in these yards that would obstruct anybody from crossing through?
No.
Okay. There are none, is that correct?
I'm not sure.
Oh, very good. One of the things that we were talking about is measuring distances. And so one of the questions that I have for you is the distance here well, we have a photograph with the truck. Let me find that. Here's our truck. Let me see if I can get a better master shot of that. Here we go. I'm going to show you State's Exhibit 54. Were you aware that there was a confrontation between Mr. Arbery and Mr. McMichael in front of his truck?
No,
You were not aware of that?
no.
Ah. Were you asked at all to get a measurement? Let's say this is the front of Mr. McMichael's truck as it's facing this way, and the road is here, and then the driveway is here, where you are essentially in the grass. Were you asked to get any measurements from the front of the truck back across to the driveway where some of the blood splatter was found, or some of the blood was found?
No.
To try to understand that distance at all?
The truck never was brought to my attention.
Okay. The clothing that you collected from, and you collected the clothing, is that correct?
The clothing from who?
From Mr. Arbery?
No,
You did not. That was done later back at the crime lab.
correct.
Okay, but you photographed Mr. Arbery's body, and there, I think, in that photograph, we see some cargo shorts, is that correct?
That's correct.
A long belt,
Correct.
a bandana around his neck,
Correct.
and no socks,
Correct.
just sneakers.
Correct.
Okay. One of the things that you did also is to collect fingerprints from Mr. Arbery,
Correct.
so that those fingerprints that you took from his actual hands could be compared possibly to what we call latent prints that may be on an object. Is that correct? Am I using that term right?
So we took prints to put in our system to make identification. There was no comparisons done because there was no latent prints to compare them to.
So latent prints meaning if I touch an object with my finger, I could leave a fingerprint on that
You could leave a
object.
latent, yes.
And that would be called a latent fingerprint.
Correct.
Okay, then we have the actual fingerprints taken off the person,
Correct.
which we then can compare to these unknown latent prints.
I guess I don't, when we take prints, we submit them through our APHA system for identification.
Okay.
So I'm not really sure, there was nothing to compare the prints to.
Okay, so what you're saying is no one, when you were out there, at least on that day, discussed with you that there were objects that needed to be fingerprinted for latent prints. Is that
No.
fair?
The only object that took any kind of consideration was the shotgun at the time, due to the fact that it had blood. So that would have had to go to the lab to have a serologist at least look at it to see how we can maintain the blood and the fingerprints.
And did that happen?
I'm not sure.
Okay, but a shotgun is something that you can get fingerprints off of, correct?
Correct.
The metal part of the gun, you could lift fingerprints off of that.
Correct.
The wooden parts of the gun, the handle, the stock, all those things, you could lift fingerprints off those if you were to try to do it.
Yes, correct.
Okay, but you were not part of any team that went to inspect or try to lift off latent prints from the shotgun.
No.
Okay, what about Mr. Bryan's truck? Were you informed on that day that there might be latent fingerprints on Mr. Bryan's truck?
No.
Okay, so you have nothing to do with that if that was done later.
So I obtained prints from Lieutenant Brandon Gregory. It was a palm print
Okay.
that he said he obtained from a truck.
Okay,
What truck, I'm not sure,
What truck?
but those are what I obtained from whoever processed the truck.
all right, so later in this process of this case, you were given a latent palm print to then put into evidence or deliver to be analyzed. Is that
Correct.
correct? Okay, all right, very good. I think you've also testified that the firearm that you collected had an empty shell in the chamber, meaning a spent shell that was in the chamber.
That's correct.
Okay, it had not been ejected out of the chamber and a new round loaded.
Correct.
Okay. Are you familiar with the dynamics of how that shell would be ejected out?
I am.
It would only be ejected out if the person with the gun re-racked it again to put a new live round in.
That's correct.
Okay. One of the things that you did, though, and we heard a little bit about it, is that you did a neighborhood canvass.
That's correct.
And the neighborhood canvass that you did was, and did involve 3 streets in the neighborhood.
Correct.
You recall, it involved Burford, And do you recall, as you're sitting here, the number of houses that you went? A person who saw the actual shooting. A witness could be anybody with knowledge that's relevant to your investigation.
That's correct.
Okay. Witnesses to the potential relationship between the two men involved in the conflict.
Correct.
Witnesses that might understand who Mr. Arbery is or what he's doing in the neighborhood.
Correct.
Okay. Witnesses that might know Travis McMichael.
Correct.
Witnesses that may know about the history of break-ins or burglaries or thefts in the neighborhood.
Correct.
Okay, so you went knocking on doors with another investigator.
I did.
That was investigator who?
Heather Savage.
Investigator Savage. So the two of you, if my records are correct, on Burford, you went to 300, I'm going to list them out, okay? 300, 302, 305, 310, 314, 316, 318, and 322. Does that sound right?
I believe so, yes.
Okay, so just in looking at our map again, essentially, you started here at the beginning of Burford, and you went all the way up the street looking for information.
Correct.
Okay. Anybody that didn't answer the door, you left a card, and perhaps you would get a phone call back.
Correct.
And then whoever identified themselves as someone with knowledge, you would then pass that person's name over to another investigator who would follow up.
We would, Investigator Lowry, who's the case agent, would have.
Lowry, we're going to call him the head case agent, is that
Correct.
right?
That's correct.
That's where everything comes up to him and he makes the calls about what to do.
That's correct.
All right. Only one of those in every case, is that fair?
About 2 if possible.
2 if possible,
Yeah.
okay. And Investigator Marcy was another investigator that took a lot of responsibility in this case as well.
I'm not aware.
Not aware. Okay. Now, you also went up Holmes, the street where the shooting took place, and you went to 404, 405, 416, 418, and 419. Is that right?
That's correct.
So if we're looking at Holmes here, this is our street here on Holmes, you went pretty much all the way up and down Holmes looking for information.
Correct.
Okay. And then lastly, you also were looking at residents on Satilla, and this would carry from 221, 235, 239, and then 225 through 229. So essentially, again, you're coming in this area here looking for anybody that knows anything.
Correct.
Okay. Very good. Now, by the time that you arrived on the scene, Travis McMichael was not there any longer, right?
Not that I'll say no, but I wasn't paying attention to who was involved.
Okay.
So-
You were not asked to photograph him on the scene,
No.
or to talk with him on the scene,
No.
or to take fingerprints from him on the scene.
No.
Okay. And then I think later that day, you actually saw him back at headquarters.
Who?
Travis McMichael.
Yes.
Yeah, you had a very brief interaction with him there. And I believe you noticed that he was in a distraught state.
Yes.
And I think you even asked him, "Are you okay?" And he said no.
Yes.
Okay. Now, the next day, you went back to the neighborhood, and this was, we were talking about doing some of this neighborhood canvass.
Correct.
Is that right? And as you were walking through the neighborhood and coming up Satilla, you came across Mr. McMichael, Travis McMichael.
Correct.
Now, he lives, in terms of your canvass, he lives right here at 230.
Correct.
Is that correct? So 230 is in the heart of the houses that you're knocking on the doors, right?
Correct.
Okay. And again, when you saw Mr. McMichael that day, he was outside in his yard.
Correct.
Again, he was distraught.
Correct.
He was upset, right?
Correct.
Trying to figure it all out.
Correct.
That's what he said to you. I'm just trying to figure this all out.
Correct.
Give me 1 second, please.
We were making sure, I just want to make sure.
The two of you that are in the gallery, the large board, I saw there was some, you saw it.
Talking about
Yeah,
that.
they saw it.
You see it, okay?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, nothing further, Your Honor, thank you.
No question.
Mr. Goff.
A few. Good morning, ma'am.
Good morning.
My name's Kevin Goff. I represent Mr. Bryan, and I just have a few more questions for you, if that's
No
okay. I think you indicated you did a canvass of the neighborhood,
Correct.
and one of the reasons you did that was to locate surveillance videos, if there were any, that might have captured this incident.
Correct.
All right. Did you miss Roddie Bryan's house?
I don't know where he lives.
Okay. Did you? But your practice was to leave business cards.
Correct.
All right. Did you ever recover any surveillance videos from Mr. Bryan?
There were a few residents that had them that were not able to obtain them, which we sent another investigator to locate or to obtain those videos if possible.
So how did the Glenn County Police Department recover the night owl videos?
I'm not sure.
Did you recover the night owl videos?
No.
No further questions.
Any redirect?
Investigator Ramos, when you were out on scene, we saw in one of those pictures a truck driving away.
Correct.
Okay. Were you aware that there was a second truck on scene earlier that day?
No.
About how long after the incident did you arrive on scene, do you know, roughly?
Maybe about an hour. I'm not sure what time the call came out. I arrived around 2:15. I want to say I estimate about an hour.
So if those trucks contained any sort of evidence, inside or outside, you didn't have a chance to document or collect any of that on scene that day?
Objection, Your Honor, that's leading.
Did you have an opportunity?
That's sustained.
Did you have an opportunity to collect any evidence or photograph anything from the trucks that day?
No.
Just 1 second. Investigator Ramos, when you sent that box or when you put the information or evidence collected from the shotgun and the ballistics, the 4 unfired and the 1 fired shot, you put that into the box and sealed it up, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And Judge, for the record, when we had said what was inside of the box, it was test fires and the shotgun. Ballistics were done later on, and those will be tendered later. The 4 unfired and the 1 fired will be tendered later.
Object to testifying right now.
Yeah, let's, off the record. Oh, I'm sorry, we can go ahead and address that.
You put those inside the box and sent them off, correct?
Correct.
Correct.
Can I clarify
Sure.
something? So when we packaged it, it got turned over to the GBI. So I can't say that I sent them off. I don't know what happened after the custody was turned over to the GBI.
Okay. No further questions, Judge.
Anything on that limited issue from the defense?
No, Your Honor, thank you.
No, Your Honor.
There you are.
All right. Thank you. You can step down.
Judge, we're going to reserve reserve the right to recall her. She knows that. We just let all the witnesses know that.
Yeah, let's, so you are subject to recall,
Correct.
and you are free to go to Dave.
Thank you.
Thank you. Stay ready with this next witness.
Yes, Your Honor. At this time, the state calls Ricky Minshew. Ricky Minshew.
Watch behind you. If you raise your right hand, swear to tell the truth, whole truth, and nothing but the truth. I do.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Now, go ahead and introduce yourself to the jurors. Tell them your name and spell it for the court reporter, please.
My name is Ricky Minshew, R-I-C-K-Y, M-I-N-S-H-E-W.
Okay. And how are you currently employed?
I work in meal production.
You work in what now?
Meal production.
Okay. I want to turn your attention to February 23rd of 2020. Okay. How were you employed at that time?
I was a patrol unit at Glenn County Police Department.
Okay. And at that time, how long had you been with Glenn County PD?
I was there for, at that date, approximately 7 months.
Okay.
There was about a 4-year gap, and I previously worked for Glenn County PD for a couple of years back in 2013.
Okay. So when did you first start in law enforcement?
2012.
2012. And which agency was that with?
It was for the city of Brunswick.
Okay, City of Brunswick. So Brunswick PD?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. How long were you with Brunswick PD?
For approximately 1 year.
Okay. After that 1 year, where did you go?
I went to Glenn County Police Department, and I was there for about 2 years.
2 years. Okay. And what did you do there during that 2 years?
I worked in the patrol division.
Okay. After those 2 years, where did you go?
After those 2 years, I went into retail management.
Okay.
I was there for about 4 years, and then came back to Glenn County Police Department, where I was there for about 7 months before this date.
Before this date?
Correct.
Okay. So during the 7 months you were there at Glenn County PD before February 23rd, what were your duties, just briefly?
All right, I was on patrol division, and my duties were to, we were designated certain areas to patrol. The point of that was to be seen and to deter and detect crime, enforce traffic laws, and respond to 911 calls of emergency.
Okay. Now, were you post-certified at that time?
I was.
Okay. Did that pretty much mean that you had arrest powers under the state of Georgia?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Now, did you have, at the time back in 2020, when you were with Glenn County PD, did you have any kind of medical training?
I had a previous CPR training and the use of a defibrillator, but I have never had any specialized medical training, nothing toward any type of critical injury.
Okay. So did you have essentially basic CPR training?
Yeah, basic CPR and the use of a defib.
Okay. Are you familiar with a neighborhood known as Satilla Shores?
Yes, ma'am.
Where is that neighborhood located?
It's located on the south end of Glenn County. It's in Brunswick, Georgia.
Okay. And was Satilla Shores a part of the zone that you patrolled back in 2020?
It was. We call our zones Bakers. That one was referred to Baker 9.
Baker 9. Okay. How long did you patrol Baker 9?
Back in 2014 for about a year, and then I patrolled several months of that, the 7 months that I was back, several months at that point.
Okay. And at the point where you're patrolling, are you patrolling with other officers during your shift, or is it pretty much just you?
Yes, ma'am. We're a one-man car.
One man in the car.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So during, say, the day shift, are you the only officer patrolling Baker 9?
Yes, we're a one-man car, and then usually it's one man per area, per baker.
Per baker, okay. Are you familiar with another neighborhood called the Fancy Bluff area?
Yes, ma'am. Fancy Bluff is directly across the street from Satilla Shores. It's on the opposite side of the highway of Highway 17.
Highway 17, okay. So Satilla Shores is on what side?
Satilla Shores is on the south side.
Okay.
And then directly across the street, headed toward the north direction, is Fancy Bluff.
Is Fancy Bluff. Approximately how many miles would you say separate Satilla Shores from the Fancy Bluff neighborhood?
Probably 2 to 3 miles.
Okay. So it's fairly close.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Are you familiar with another neighborhood known as Royal Oaks?
Yes, ma'am. It is in between Satilla Shores and Interstate 95. It's directly next door to it.
Okay. How far is Royal Oaks from Satilla Shores?
Just a few seconds if you're driving.
Okay. Are they on the same side of the street, same side of Highway 17?
Yes, correct.
Okay. All right. Now, seeing as how you patrolled Baker 9 and you patrolled that area, how would you describe crime just generally in that area with Fancy Bluff, Satilla Shores, and Royal Oaks?
The area itself is probably one of the largest bakers that we have. Mm-hmm. And it's relatively low call volume. I myself didn't experience a whole lot of crime initially. Most of the time that when I would go to any type of violent crime, it was surrounded by family violence. Okay. But it was far few in between. For the most part, it was a quiet. Everyone known to it to be a quiet area, so just a low call volume. Low call volume.
Okay. Are the roadways in the Satilla Shores subdivision public roadways?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Now, I want to turn your attention back to February 23rd, 2020. Did you respond to a call in that Satilla Shores subdivision?
Yes, I did.
Okay. And can you tell us what that call was in reference to?
I was dispatched to a 1037, which means a suspicious person. Okay. So I was described as a suspicious black male in the neighborhood wearing a white T-shirt.
Okay. And do you remember about what time you were dispatched? That call
the call came out at 1:08 p.m.
Okay. And where were you when you received that call?
I was fairly close. I used Highway 17 quite often to go from one side of the county to the other. Okay. And I got there at 1:13 p.m.
1:13 p.m. So it came out at 1:08, and you got there within minutes at 1:13.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And do you remember if a specific address was the subject of that dispatch?
Yes, ma'am. I believe it was 219 Satilla.
Satilla. Okay. And as you're driving to that location, are you running lights and sirens? In other words, are your lights and sirens on or activated?
No, ma'am. I only use lights and sirens when I'm responding to an emergency call. This call was just came out as a suspicious person, so there wasn't any use of lights or sirens.
Okay. Now, when you get into the neighborhood, what do you do?
When I get into the neighborhood, I roll down my back windows. I usually roll down some windows, that way I can hear what's going on around me. Okay. And then I just proceed driving down Satilla Drive.
How fast would you say you were going?
I was going very slow. I was probably going less than 5 miles per hour.
Okay. And why is that?
That way we can observe. I can observe things a little bit better, and I can see things ahead of me.
Okay. Now, as you're driving down Satilla Drive, does anything catch your attention? Do you hear anything?
When I first come in the neighborhood, I didn't hear anything. As I go a little further down Satilla Drive, I hear 2 loud pop sounds. Okay. They were within a couple seconds apart. Okay.
And what did you think when you heard those loud pop sounds?
Well, it was pretty loud, so I knew it was being the boom sound that it was. It was either a firearm or fireworks. It was sounding one or the other. Okay.
So were fireworks common during that time, like at 1-something on a Sunday afternoon? Tell us about that.
Not specifically on that day or time, but throughout the county in general, it was not uncommon actually to hear fireworks. Any time of the day or night, periodically.
Okay. So at the point where you hear the loud bang, what do you do?
Just continue driving. I'm still patrolling, looking for anyone who's walking around the area. And I'm still on Satilla Drive, and I'm coming up on an intersection, which is Holmes Road and Satilla Drive.
Okay. And as you're coming up to that intersection, are you able to see anything?
Not yet. You're coming in, and it comes, if you're in my driver's seat, it starts to bear to the left. So it's a curve you got to make before I get to that intersection.
Okay. And if we can just pause there, I have something here. And this has already been admitted into evidence, states 47. Are you able to see that
Yes, ma'am.
on your screen? Okay. So, what are we looking at here?
You're looking at, this is the intersection of Satilla Drive and Holmes Road.
Okay.
And this is taken from the actual scene.
Okay. So, do we see on states 47 your path of travel to that intersection?
Yes, ma'am. If you look in the furthest distance, that lighter colored car that the sun is shining on.
Actually, let's do this, Mr. Minshew. Judge, do you mind if he steps down, if he can project his voice, just to point on this?
To this picture?
Yes, if that's all right.
Yeah, I just want to make sure everybody can see.
Okay.
Yeah, why don't you be careful stepping down. And if you could just project so everybody can hear you. And do me a favor, don't touch the screen. Sure. Just point at it.
And if you want to, you can use my mic and just kind of use this pen so we don't touch the screen.
You can go.
Right here.
Yeah, no, just if you just. Why is he coming down then?
I was just going to have him point like
on the
that.
document?
Right, if that's all right.
Can everybody see if he stands there?
And just
No.
remember to project your voice. Thank you. Okay, so show us where you were coming from.
So, this road here.
Mm-hmm.
I was way back. It's opposite. I was way back here.
Okay.
I'm coming this direction.
And what road is that you're driving down?
That is still Satilla Drive.
Satilla Drive. Okay, so have you already passed the house in question, the 219, 220 Satilla? At that point?
Sit down.
Yeah, you can sit down. That's fine.
I have not. I was around the area of those houses. I don't know exactly where I was.
Okay.
But I was in the area of those particular addresses.
Okay. So you said you were turning the corner, and was your view clear at the point when you're turning the corner, or was there something obstructing your view?
Yeah, even as I get further down that road, if you notice where I was pointing at, in the very center of the screen, yep.
Right here?
To your right there's a very tall, large head of bushes. So again, you still got to come around the curve. And then I can see the intersection, but to the left of it, which is where the scene is, I wasn't able to see that until I cleared those bushes.
So you cleared those bushes that we were just pointing to. Okay. So at the point where you cleared those bushes, what were you able to see?
Once I got past there, I looked over and I noticed there was two white males. One was waving their hand, flagging me down.
Okay. And how long did it take for you to encounter the scene from when you heard the shots?
Probably a minute.
About a minute or
45
so?
seconds, minute, yeah, it was approximately.
Okay. So you saw two white males and you said one was waving you down?
Yes, ma'am.
So what did you do after that?
I continued going forward. Did not know what the situation was at the time. I just seen someone flagging me down for calling me over.
Okay.
I continued driving until I got to that intersection, and then I parked my patrol car and got out of my car.
Did you see any other officers on scene, or were you the first officer on scene?
No, ma'am. I was the first officer there, yes, ma'am.
So at the point where you get to the intersection, what do you do?
When I get out of the intersection, as I'm exiting my patrol car, I immediately hit my Axon body camera, which is located on the center of my chest. It takes a double tap to turn it on. I got out of my car and to see what was going on. And I seen two males there in front of me, and I observed a black male laying in the middle of the roadway, and he was covered in blood.
Okay. The two men who you encountered, what were they doing?
One was just kind of pacing in a small area, just walking. The other doing the same thing, just pacing, walking in a small area there.
Okay. Now, as the first officer on scene, what's your focus?
My first focus to any scene, including this one, is officer safety. So when I get to a scene, I scan the area to see if there's any immediate threats, and then scan the area for any victims that need emergency medical aid.
Okay.
In this case, once I observed the body laying there and covered in blood, I went ahead and communicated with dispatch and summoned the emergency medical personnel to the scene. And then my focus from that point is for scene security, scene integrity.
Okay.
I want my job is to make sure that the scene stays in its natural state that it was found and changes least as amount as possible.
And why is that?
It's just important for when investigators get there that scene integrity keeps everything the way it was originally.
Okay.
That way, throughout their investigation, they can see how everything was, including evidence and victim where people are positioned and laying at.
When you arrived on scene, did you see any vehicles?
Yes, ma'am. When I arrived on scene, directly in front of me, behind where the body was laying and the two men, there was a white F-150.
Okay.
And then right behind that one was a black Chevrolet Silverado truck.
Okay. And are those two vehicles commonly known as pickup trucks?
Yes, ma'am.
Now, you mentioned the black male that was lying in the street. How did he appear?
He appeared to be, he was wearing a white T-shirt. He had khakis and white tennis shoes. He appeared to be unresponsive to his surroundings. He appeared to be deceased. He was covered in blood.
Okay.
The back of his shirt, the majority of the back of his shirt was covered in blood. And up underneath him, he had bled out to the point that the blood was exceeding the perimeter of his body. So he was laying face down on his stomach in the puddle of blood. Okay.
Did you hear any kind of sounds at all coming from the deceased male?
Yes, ma'am. I heard it's like an agonal breathing. I've always heard it being called a death rattle.
Okay. And is that a sound that you had heard before?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. When?
I have responded to a suicide and to multiple vehicle fatalities where it's been at the people's last moment after death.
Mm-hmm. Okay, and you heard it those times?
And I heard the same type sound, yes, ma'am.
Okay. Now, seeing that, did you attempt any CPR or anything like that on the deceased male?
I did not, no, ma'am.
Okay. Why not?
Well, when I got there, I did not know any of the people or any of the facts or circumstances to what had happened. The only thing I knew that I observed was a body laying in the middle of the roadway that had just bled out, and it was by apparent gunfire. So, being that I was the only officer on scene, without having any other police units to watch my back, there was no way that I could switch my attention to anything medical and still be able to watch my surroundings and watch after my own safety.
Okay.
And I also did not have the adequate medical training. My uniform and patrol car was not equipped either with any type of medical supplies or medical equipment that would have sufficed working on any gunshot or a critical injury.
What did you have in your vehicle? Did you have any kind of first aid kit?
Yes, ma'am. I had a small first aid pouch.
Okay.
It's probably approximately the average size of an open hand. And inside of that was things that were made for like minor cuts and things like that. It had like Band-Aids, ointment, and antiseptic wipes.
Okay. Now, the males who you saw on scene, do you see them in the courtroom today?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So, do you see a person by the name of William Bryan in the courtroom today?
Yes, ma'am.
And if you need to stand, you can do that. Can you point him out and describe what he's wearing?
Yes, ma'am. It's going to be the gentleman here on the very end, blue overcoat, khaki pants, wearing glasses.
And, Your Honor, I would like the record to reflect that he just identified Defendant Bryan. Now, do you see someone by the name of Greg McMichael, who you saw on scene?
Yes, ma'am. It's going to be the fourth from the very end here. It's going to be a black tie, black overcoat, and glasses as well.
And Judge, if the record could reflect that he has identified Defendant Greg McMichael. Do you see Travis McMichael, who you also saw on the scene that day?
Yes, ma'am. Fourth over from this lady here. It's going to be he's going to have glasses on and a gray overcoat.
Okay. Judge, let the record reflect that he has just identified Travis McMichael. Thank you, Mr. Minshew. Now, when you're on scene, did you immediately see any weapons?
When I got on scene, I didn't see them right off the bat. Momentarily, though, I did see a shotgun laying over in a grassy yard.
Okay.
It was going to be pretty much directly behind where I originally saw Travis standing when I got there.
Okay. And was there anything notable about the shotgun when you saw it?
Yes, ma'am. It was. It had blood. It had a significant amount of blood on the shotgun as well.
Okay. During the time that you were on scene, did you see any other weapons?
Yes, ma'am. I after a good few minutes had already passed, I observed a silver revolver handgun in the passenger seat of the white F-150.
Okay. Passenger seat of the white F-150. Okay. Now, did other officers then arrive on scene there to assist you?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Second unit, throughout the investigation, many showed up, but the second unit to arrive was Officer Duggan.
Okay. And did Officer Duggan render aid to the deceased male?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Did you put up any kind of crime scene tape or anything like that?
I did. That's part of the crime scene integrity, is to set up a perimeter around the border of what you think at that time is going to consist of all the evidence. It keeps people from walking inside of the perimeter.
Okay, thank you. States Exhibits 40 through 42 and also States Exhibit 131. Are we good? Okay. May I approach, Judge?
Go ahead.
All right, so I'm showing you what's been marked for identification purposes. That's States Exhibit 40, 41, 42, and 131. If you can look at those and tell me if you recognize them, and tell me how.
All right. States Exhibit 131.
Yes, we can start there.
Yep. I recognize the, you can see the caution tape that I put up.
Okay.
And you can see there's the white. Let's see if you can
Identify them and then we can describe them.
Sure.
Okay.
So, do you identify those pictures? Have you seen them before?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Is that a yes?
Yes, ma'am, it is. I do identify the pictures.
All right. And do they fairly and accurately depict the scene as you saw it when you went out there at Holmes and Sapilla on February 23rd, 2020?
Yes, ma'am.
Do they appear to have been altered or changed in any way?
No.
At this time, we tender States 40, 41, 42, and 131.
No objection, Your Honor.
No objection, Your Honor.
No objection, Your Honor.
They're admitted.
Permission to publish, Judge?
Go ahead.
Okay. So starting with Exhibit 40, Mr. Minshew, can you just let the jurors know what we're looking at in Exhibit 40?
Okay.
And before we get there,
Mhm.
is this a photo you took?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
A lot of times, I'll take an overshot. It's just an overview of the overall scene. I usually try to do that as quickly as possible,
Okay.
just in case something gets moved or changed around. That way we can see the original state.
Okay. So here, did you take these photos as soon as you got on scene?
Yeah, probably within a minute and a half to 2 minutes.
Okay. So here, what are we looking at here in the center?
That right there is Mr. Ahmaud Arbery's body.
Okay. And was this photo taken before it was moved by Officer Duggan?
It was before. I was still the only officer on scene.
Okay. Now, going to States 41, what are we looking at here in States 41?
All right, you see my patrol car there to the left.
Is this it?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
And Mr. Ahmaud Arbery's body laying directly in the center of the roadway.
Okay. Right here.
Yes, ma'am. And
What
then
do we see over here?
and then there's the white F-150 truck.
Okay. Are you able to recognize who this person is?
They had the lighter gray shirt on. Looks like Gregory McMichael.
Okay. And here we go. Looking at States 42, what do we see here in States 42?
Mr. Ahmaud Arbery's body laying in the center of the road.
Okay.
In the backdrop, we have the white F-150. Behind that is a black Chevrolet Silverado.
Okay.
It looks like there is Mr. Gregory McMichael there again. And then if you look down, go over to your left just a hair, there's going to be a shotgun.
Okay. So is this where the shotgun was when you
Yes,
first
ma'am.
got on scene? Okay. Looking at States 131, what are we looking at here?
Okay, that is, you're looking through the caution tape that I put up. Right past that is the white F-150.
Right here?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Then behind that one, you have the black Chevrolet Silverado.
Okay.
And then
And who do we see here at the Silverado?
that is
This person.
that is William Bryan.
Okay. And who is this person standing near him?
Gregory McMichael.
Okay. And do you recognize this as a screenshot from your body cam video, Mr. Minshew?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And at the point where this is happening on your body cam, is this before Mr. Bryan was interviewed by you?
Yes, ma'am.
And this is before Mr. McMichael, Greg McMichael, was interviewed by other officers, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. All right. Okay, so you said you were wearing a body cam on that day, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And did you review that body cam footage before coming to court today?
Yes, I did.
Did you review it in its entirety?
Yes, I did, ma'am.
Okay. And does it fairly and accurately depict your time on the scene?
It does.
Was it altered or deleted in any way?
No, ma'am.
At this time, Judge, we would tender States 228.
From the defense.
Which is the body cam.
The body cam, his body cam video, correct?
No objection.
No objection.
Submitted. What was the number again?
228, Judge. And also, Mr. Minshew, I am showing you what's been marked for identification purposes as States Exhibit 228A. Can you look at this, flip through it, tell me if you recognize it?
Yes, ma'am. Looks like a transcribed transcription of my body camera.
Okay. And similarly, before coming to court today, did you look at that entire transcript? Did you review it?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And does it seem to mirror your body cam video in terms
Yes,
of the
ma'am.
words that are spoken?
It does.
At this time, we tender states 228A.
For demonstrative purposes.
Yes, correct.
To aid the jury.
Correct.
Presented, no objection.
And to aid the witness.
No objection.
No objection.
One moment, Your Honor. And Judge, just for the record, we are tendering these just for this presentation. Of course, they won't be going back there with the jury. And defense counsel, they understand that.
So, speaking of the transcript.
Transcript, correct.
What are we doing with the transcript of it?
Well, because we're not playing the video, so the officer will use that to help him testify and quote what was said.
So as we sit here now, we understand the video is evidence. That's one thing. The transcript is going to be used to help guide the testimony as well as help the jury understand what's being said. On the video, transcript is the object.
Okay, it's in for demonstrative purposes. And the only reason I ask is I don't want to give a charge if a transcript is being provided to the panel. I understand they're not being provided to the panel. It's simply being used by the witness in order to aid in his testimony. I understand.
Just being clear for the record, the video itself, 28, is an evidence.
No. So I want to clarify. The agreement with defense counsel was that these are both being tendered in for the record only, and his body cam video is not being tendered into evidence to be played at any point in time at this time. It is strictly for the record because he's going to be testifying to the statements via the transcript to aid him in recalling the statements. So I don't want this to be misconstrued by the defense at all. This is strictly, these two items are for the record only.
Yeah, I understand how they are trying to have this officer testify about statements that were made and how there may be some limitations about those statements. The body cam is an evidence. I think it's now an evidence, so I'm not in agreement.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm not in agreement.
I'm going to ask that you go ahead and take a step into the jury room and address some legal matters before the court.
All right, to the jury, please.
All right. Mr. Minshew, I'm going to ask that you go ahead and just take a step outside. You are under oath. Please do not discuss your testimony with anybody. All right. We may have just confused a very simple issue, but I just want to make sure I understand what's going on.
And I'm sorry, but Mr. McMichael took a
Okay. Good.
break.
Just a moment.
I actually should stay up there.
So it's all here. All these, and I'm going to put them over here since you're in. Okay, so anything you want. Yeah. You need 131?
131.
Yeah.
we got everybody back.
To clarify my position, because I think I was the one talking to the court at the time. The video, I'm sorry, and we had 2 lawyers for the state, so I thought Ms. Oliver was handling this. To clarify, Your Honor, the video I intend to play, we have discussed at length statements of co-defendants and how those are going to be presented through the state. So I understand that the transcript is going to be used for this witness to testify about what he was told by one of the defendants. I get that. What I'm saying to the court is the video is in evidence. There's going to be limitations, I understand, about what statements can be played from the video and whether they invoke brutal issues, confrontation issues, etc. I get all that. We worked hard to try to limit those issues by simply having witnesses testify to those statements. But I intend to play the video, the first part of it. I can do so without sound, but I intend to play the video because it shows what was going on in the scene when he first arrived. And there is a statement made by Greg McMichael to Travis that I think falls under a hearsay exception, and Travis makes an exclamatory, guttural cry out that I want the jury to hear, which I don't think involves any issues. So, to the extent that I'm saying to the court that video is in evidence, it's in evidence. I don't intend to violate what we talked about Bruton.
Well, it sounds like we're getting ahead of where we are.
It was admitted.
It was limited. Yes.
So, no. Let me be very clear about what I heard from the parties. 228, body cam, tendered and admitted. Okay? That's it. 228A is the transcript that Minshew is going to testify, assist with his testimony so that we can work through some of the Bruton issues. Okay. That's what I understand the current status of the evidence to be.
Right.
How that body cam, if it is presented, gets presented, then is the next step in the process, which we're ahead of at this point.
I agree. And I only raised it because Ms. Donikowski stood up and said, we're not using the body cam in a certain way, and I just wanted to make sure that we understood it's in evidence and I intend to use it. But I'm not going to go back and violate the Bruton discussions that we've had. And if I feel like there's a statement that needs to be presented and if there's an exception to it that doesn't invoke Bruton, etc., then I will raise it to the court at that time, have an opportunity to be heard, and so now we're a little bit ahead of the game on that one.
I'm not entirely sure what we're arguing about from Mr. Bryan's perspective.
Well, hold on. From what I just said, it sounds like we're not arguing about anything with regard to the presentation of the evidence right now.
Well, Your Honor, if I may, this morning before we started, I informed all defense counsel that I thought it was appropriate to tender the video for the record only, to tender the transcript for the record only, out of consideration for the witnesses who were taking the stand to testify, in this case for Officer Minshew. Mr. Bryan said what Mr. Bryan did. And I explained very clearly that we were not going to play that, and it was not being offered as evidence. It was not going to go back to the jury, and I explained to them that what we were going to say is this is being tendered in strictly for the record. It's strictly to assist this witness to testify to these statements, and it's not going to go out with the jury. It's not going to be seen at all. And all of them were informed of this. So the state feels, having had an agreement from the defense, that all of a sudden we've tendered it into evidence with the purpose of making it part of the record, and with our intent clear that it was not going to be played. And now, of course, Mr. Sheffield is telling me, oh no, it's tendered into evidence, it's in evidence, I'm now going to get to play it. So the state, of course, feels a little hoodwinked, bamboozled, that I had an agreement with the defense attorneys as to what the nature of this was, and our intent to just make it part of the record. Now, if that was an error on my part to be so transparent and forthright and to try and work with them and I shouldn't have had this tendered in, and I should let them go ahead and tender the body cam in to then show portions. I understand. And I would understand the court's ruling at this juncture if it's in and they want to play portions of it, then that's on us for having attempted to do the right thing, and we'll go down that path. I just want the court to understand that my understanding in doing this, and I explained it to them, was something completely different than what they're representing right now.
Your Honor, there was a...
So he stood up first.
Okay.
And okay. I'm sympathetic to the state. Nobody wants to, in a case of this importance or magnitude, nobody wants to play gotcha games with the evidence. And certainly that's, from the Bryan defense, that's not our intention. My only concern, my only dog in this hunt is that depending on the testimony of this witness, we may or may not, subject to Brute and all the other problems that we have, it's possible that there may be small excerpts in that statement that we may want to play. And we certainly aren't waiting for the right to do that, but I didn't necessarily take the state as saying that the video is being played, the entire thing is subject to being played without any further inquiry. My primary concern here is I don't want any authentication issues if there's portions of the video that are otherwise appropriate to be played before the jury.